all along, go to your full board agenda and just scroll down to page 29. And that is where the list of the policies that we're going to be reviewing this evening begins. We have, as we have had at our last meeting, we have a lot of sort of adjustments and changes that are based on changes to state law. This is sort of the second tranche of a lot of these housekeeping type policies. I know you've all had a chance to already look this over, but we're still going to ask Dr. Severe to go through it with us, and we'll take a motion and a vote on each policy individually as we move through. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Severe.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Masters, you mentioned that these are oftentimes in reaction to recently enacted statutes. This first one is not. This is one coming from us in order to help streamline the work of the district in its charter school oversight. As you know, the board passes off on any waivers that Dr. Battle recommends that move forward in order to help charter schools meet the work that they've set forth in their agreement with us. This simply allows, let me scroll down to the amended language where you can see it there highlighted. This would add a number 19 and essentially say that the director of schools or designee could review, approve, and then report back to the board any waivers that would be granted rather than coming to the board directly. These are oftentimes things, they're generally curriculum related, where they want to teach a piece of curriculum in one grade rather than another. These are not things that are not waivable. Obviously, things like teacher licenses or class size or certain things that are not waivable have never been recommended for you to approve, and that would be the case moving forward.
So I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
All right. And then with that, do we have any questions about this policy addition? All right, then all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously, and we'll move on to the next.
Thank you, Chair. Policy 4.201 deals with class size ratios, and let me just get right to it there. For a while, there has been the opportunity to increase class sizes up to, as you know, that career technical courses have a lower class size ratio, and that's been done because so many of those courses are lab-based, involve equipment that could be that needs to be managed. You need a lower teacher-pupil ratio. That waiver has been allowed to go to the standard class size number in grades 7 through 12. It was probably an oversight, actually, all these years to not include 6 through 8, but the legislature did offer that opportunity for us to have those same waivers for, or those same class size ratios, grades 6 through 12 NCT courses. And those are, of course, courses that are classroom-based. These would not be courses where a student is using, a farm implement or a welder or something like that. They would definitely need a lot more oversight than a standard classroom.
Anyone like to make a motion?
Second.
All right, any questions? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it passes unanimously.
Thank you, Chair. Policy 4.213 deals with the family life education curriculum, and it really is in response to 3 statutes that passed. Public Chapter 571, which requires that instruction on sex trafficking, sex abuse, and internet crimes be incorporated into the curriculum. Public Chapter 795 requires that the family life curriculum cover human development and human sexuality, and that includes a video of fetal development. And then finally, 970 prohibits instruction on topics related to sexual activity for students in grades K through 5, which is not occurring. So this just prohibits something that is not currently occurring. You can see in the draft that you received that gets amended in just a couple of different places. It also requires a reporting. Really, the newest part is the reporting piece at the very end that the district sends to the state who is teaching or trained professionals, oftentimes people from outside who are not school district employees who come into districts to teach family life curriculum, make those people known to the state.
Anyone? Okay. We're not able to get a motion on this one. So we will move on to the next policy. Okay.
Public Chapter 550 compels us to create a new policy, which is something actually we, even though this may have one of the shorter summaries in your executive summary, it's probably the biggest lift we've had policy-wise in a long time around here. In terms of artificial intelligence. The law specifically states that we need to create a policy around artificial intelligence for instructional and assignment purposes, essentially to help students understand what is an appropriate use of AI in completing assignments. This district realizes that artificial intelligence and generative AI is a much broader topic than that and impacts a lot of our business, including finance, potentially human resources, all sorts of things. This is an area of our world that is changing much faster than the policy can keep up. So it has been the practice of this board, the wise practice of this board, I believe, to create a set of guiding principles and then let the administrative procedures that fall out underneath that sort of stand to implement how we would deal with many things, in this particular case, AI. This one's completely in yellow because it's completely new. But this has been the work of a lot of people, maybe as many as 30 or so over the course of this summer, reaching back into last spring. We have worked with a lot of different groups on this. A lot of people have looked at this and are using it as their model for their own district. And so we're pretty proud of this work, and we think it would be a policy that will serve the district well.
Motion to approve.
Great. I just want to start by saying I am very appreciative of this effort to acknowledge the reality of AI and the fact that it's I think going to be a smart move on our part to help guide the use of it in meaningful and helpful ways. And I'm glad that we're sort of being a leader in being thoughtful around this. Yes, Dr. Gentry.
Thank you. So I'm going down to, I believe this is the second page, under notice to parents. It says an approved list of AI programs. Define AI programs, because there's software that on its face isn't presented as an AI program, but it uses AI in some of the components, how it generates a list that you search from or how it does other things, but on its face, it's not AI. So what does it mean when we say that we're going to provide an approved list of AI programs to be on our district website? How are we defining an AI program?
So in this case, that would be, and if I get this wrong, someone will tap me on the shoulder, I think. But these are the things that have been brought to the district and vetted as actual tools that a student knows they're using as an AI tool, not something that's maybe backed up through AI or is another piece of like student learning management software or something that has an AI component built in, but something that a student is actually using. Whether it be, it's kind of the brands you've heard about, like ChatGPT or.
Okay. All right, so, and I don't think that's a policy clarification, but I think someplace it needs to be stated, whether it's on the website, that below is a listing of software AI programs that something, such as, or whatever, right? I think the other question I have, and I don't know that it was clear to me, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, that this was really about student-facing versus tools used within the district. So is that the same? Is it all inclusive, or is it just student-facing tools or student interfacing tools? Or is it any tool that we're using in a district?
Great question. So the law requires us to look at it through a student-facing lens.
Okay.
We've taken a little broader swipe at it there in those guiding principles to say this is the same sort of guiding principle that we should have for teachers using AI to generate work and for their students to do, or the district using AI tools in whatever capacity that's deemed appropriate, that it should be done in a way with integrity and on through that list.
Okay, I think my last question is lines 13 and 14 on this page here that's on the screen. It says that the director of school shall annually submit a report on the enforcement of this policy. What does that mean?
We don't know. And that is in the statute.
It seemed pretty ambiguous to
I
me.
think you'll find out somewhere around the end of June of next year what
I
that
won't.
looks like.
No, I won't.
Yeah, that is touche.
If I could just leave this as a golden nugget, can we try to figure that out?
Just say, I mean, we do have some enforcement mechanisms in place. For instance, we have the ability to block certain websites from student access and staff access, but for the most part, student access. So, we're not going to allow them to access certain websites that we know might be used for potential cheating or something like that. So we already have those safeguards in place. That's one of the enforcement mechanisms. We're also going to be planning on providing some training to teachers and staff so that they can get to use that. And then we're going to be evaluating certain tools as they go on. So on our website, we currently have this on our website, MNPS.org/AI, where you have the two tools that we're currently allowing for sort of teacher and student use. And the only one that's approved for student use is Canva right now, which is a design tool, and even those generative functions aren't necessarily live yet. So we're just trying to get prepared and make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, and that we really dig deep and make sure we're evaluating what the impact will be to the student. Staff will still have access to a lot of different AI programs that they can use. Copilot is the one that we have approved for use because it has FERPA compliance protection. So if, for instance, they were to upload some information around student personally identifiable information, that would be protected, whereas some of the others like ChatGPT may not be. So that's what we're going to try to work with staff on. So we will definitely have a robust program to sort of report out once we get all this on board.
So that report would include what's on the list that's been blocked, it's what has been added and why it was added.
I don't know that
And
it'll-
just to arm board members from parents asking, well, why can't my child, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll include all of the different
Sure.
ones because there's a lot of different
but the
websites that are
common
blocked.
ones,
But yeah,
but yeah.
we'll definitely list some of those safeguards that we have in place in order to make sure that students aren't accessing things that they're not supposed to be doing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. We'll do Aaron, then Cheryl. Did you raise your hand, Cheryl? Okay, we'll do Cheryl, then Aaron. We'll do Board Member Mays and then Board Member Block.
Yeah, so mine, I think, is relatively quickly. I think Sean just sort of alluded to training for educators. And in my conversations with educators leading up to a policy, the question that I have presented to them was, how do you implement an AI policy in your classrooms effectively? So I'd be really curious to know what type of training modules that we're going to present to educators to make sure that they're following this policy. If, of course, any have been identified.
Ms. Mays, I'm not aware of oh, thank you.
I get to come
Yeah.
in this time. Hello, I'm Doug Renfro, over the Office of Digital Strategy. There is a module being built right now, will be available July 31st as our teachers come back. It will cover the policy, it will cover the law, it will cover the use in the classroom, what you can and cannot do with it. And it will also cover basic prompt use of AI and how to prompt to get the information out that you want. Again, we are using Copilot. It is a protected environment, so none of the information that goes into this builds into the training data for any AI model. So that's why we're really focusing on Copilot. Once we have that course done, we will have more feedback from those learners and say, what are the next steps that you need? And we will continue with that process. We have a procedure that we'll also post later this week of use cases for AI in the classroom to support this policy.
Okay, thank you. And that helps me, that makes me feel a lot better. Thank you so much. I don't want us to get into a situation where we are expecting more than what we are providing for our educators. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I know that on our agenda tonight, we also have a contract that talks about using a particular software to look at, plagiarism or any of these types of things. I appreciate about this policy that it's all, it is like primarily positive about the types of things that AI can offer from a teaching and learning perspective and encouraging morally sound use and valuing human welfare and all those things. But it is also important to make sure that to the extent that we need to, we are focused on being able to track some of the academic integrity things that are mentioned on page 2 on line 8. Can you just talk a little bit more about what it means to say academic integrity statements are addressed in the handbook and what we can do to be making sure that, I know in the college environment, for example, faculty often see things that have been generated by AI. It can be obvious, but not always. I'm just wondering what we're doing in that respect.
So thank you. Yes. So academic integrity is addressed. This, it's really more of the consequences of not having academic integrity that are addressed and what would happen if you cheated, right? In this particular case, related to the software package, which you referenced, which is Turnitin, which the district has been using for many years. Yes, is the answer to your question that if someone is using AI or generative AI and it sort of went out and they used that to find information that was sort of out there in the public sphere and that was plagiarism, then Turnitin would catch that and flag it. And then, then it's up to the educator to investigate that and see if that truly is, what it says, if the problem that it could be. And then that's when the academic integrity component in the student handbook would come into play.
Yeah, and I assume from the answer previously that some of that is also included in training. And the only other question I have is just to what extent we're helping students to understand. I mean, Ms. Mays asked a great question about how we're helping educators to understand both the sort of positive uses of AI and things to be aware of. And I'm just wondering how, in an adoption of this kind of policy and in actual implementation, we're doing the same thing for our kids. And that might be, again, it might be a little too soon to know that. And maybe, but.
Yeah, I believe there's going to be an aspect within the teacher training, that's certainly, that's the focus, right? Is for kids to use it in the appropriate way.
Thank you.
Did you, yeah? No, you got it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So to piggyback off Erin and Ms. Mays, you can't really monitor it. I just did a whole process about AI and how we are using it to develop different data points and things like that. You can't really monitor it. The best thing, what I think they're trying to say is that you implement resources that the teachers and the students know what is the best possible way to gather that information using those tools because it's out there. So there's no way to really monitor it. Even if you can, let's say, ask them to type a paper, right? you put all your data points in there, it would type the paper in quote unquote, like your words. So that's not necessarily plagiarism. Right, you know what I mean? So there's not a way for you to monitor how it's being used. It's just implementing the tools for the teachers and the students so that they'll know the correct way to analyze and get the data that they need from those AI tools.
And I think that's really what I was leaning towards. I want to make sure that teachers understand the proper way to introduce the AI to students.
Right.
Because I agree, it's very difficult. If you talk about a monitoring platform, it's going to be very difficult to create something that will monitor AI completely.
Yeah. You can monitor you can always monitor plagiarism, but it's hard to you if you know how to use the tools effectively, you won't ever, I don't care what tools you have, you won't catch it. It's way more advanced than we could supersede at this point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So all in favor of passing this policy, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Moving on to 4.301.
Thank you. 4.301 is our interscholastic athletics policy. Public Chapter 639 in effect says that now homeschool students are eligible to participate. So they are eligible to participate within the same guidelines, within the guidelines set forth by the Secondary Schools Athletics Association or the Middle Schools Athletic Association.
Okay. Oh, okay. So did Dr. Gentry make the motion? Okay. Okay. Any comments or questions about this one? I'll just say I sort of appreciate the clarification around it being the zoned school because I know I have gotten questions from homeschool parents about whether or not they could sort of choose which school where they wanted to have their child try out. I about said audition, but try out for the team. And it is the zoned school. And I think this offers a little bit of clarity around that, which I appreciate. All right. All in favor, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, that one passes. And we move on to 4.403.
Thank you. So Public Chapter 782 was passed this year, and essentially, this has a very small change. If you look just down here at the footnote, again, as we said, this board has been wise in rather than saying, and I believe I even pointed this out 2 years ago when we passed this policy, this is probably going to change again, and let's just put the footnote in there that we're going to follow the law, and in your wisdom, you did that. Now the law has changed. Instead of Public Acts of 2022, it says 2024. Really, the major change is that if a person questions a piece of material, instructional material, library or non-library, then, and if the board or if the district does not act through their processes for review of that within 60 days, they can then move that directly to the state. We have a much more aggressive timeline in this district of dealing with those things. We handle them within much less than 60 days. I don't know exactly, but it's a lot shorter than that. Suffice it to say that I don't anticipate that this will change the workflow, but we just want to make sure that we're current and that you understand that if it was not acted upon, that people do have other recourse.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, any questions about this one? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Looks like that's everyone. So we will move on to 4.406.
So this is the cousin policy related to AI. This is our general use of internet policy, and it adds a new section that essentially says that if you're going to use the internet and you're going to use AI within the internet, you have to do it within the district's guiding principles, which you just voted to approve.
Second.
Okay, any questions or? All right. No, okay, all in favor? All right, that one passes unanimously as well. And moving on to 4.600 grading system.
So recently, the State Board of Education changed the percentage of extra points awarded from 4% to 5% for dual enrollment courses, and this just reflects those changes. You can see it just takes it out of the line you see there on line 28 and adds it to line 2 of the next page.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion, questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and it's unanimous. And now 4.603, promotion and retention.
Thank you, Chair. This is, again, one of those policies that has moved under our feet very quickly. Essentially, that we've struck language that is no longer applicable related to promotion and retention in third grade, and added the section on voluntary retention. That a parent or guardian who has a child enrolled in K through 2 can, if they meet these criteria, can voluntarily hold their child back during those first 3 years of school. It also creates that other path for promotion into 5th grade, which was not available to our students previously. So that's a good thing.
We'll need a motion before we can have discussion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, now,
Just a really quick question. Prior to this voluntary retention, what was the policy prior to that on the decision for
I
retention?
would have to defer.
I can speak about what it was when I was teaching, but it's been a hot second.
The hours are local. Have to look it up. Yeah, I know it involved, meetings and notice to parents and, with principals and teachers, and it was a decision. It was not
It was a
group
collaborative
decision, a collaborative process. It was not an edict for sure. And now this would allow a parent to voluntarily sort of do that unilaterally.
oh, yes.
Are you done, Dr. Yeah. How frequently have we seen a parent wanting to retain a student against teacher or principal wishes? Do we have any information about that?
It happens. I think the thing to point out in this policy is that the student has a documented academic or behavioral delay and,
Okay.
right, the parent or guardian believes the retention may benefit the student.
Okay, so the
But it does
documented
happen.
portion of it kind of replaces the old S-team meetings and everything that we would have to do beforehand. So there still needs to be some collaboration between
Absolutely.
the school and the family.
Correct.
I do appreciate that because I think it does need to be more than just somebody deciding unilaterally. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah,
Okay, that was my only concern.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, all in favor of passing this policy, please raise your hand. All right, it passes unanimously. And now 5.607, non-school employment.
So the amendments to this policy actually don't really change anything. It just moves it and clarifies. This policy relates to the notion that an employee cannot use district resources or assets for their employment, which is not related to Metro Nashville Public Schools. And the way it was written, it looked like it only applied to professional personnel. So rather than just take that language and make sure that it's clear that it applies to all personnel, not just professional personnel, but support personnel as well. Just moves the section, cuts it from the first page and puts it onto the second page.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All right, all in favor? And it passes unanimously. 6.318, admission of suspended or expelled students.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed a companion policy to this a month ago. Essentially, this says that if it has always been the law, not always, it has long time been the law that if a student is expelled from another school district and attempts to enroll in District B, from District A to District B, that information be disclosed. Now, this just clarifies that the school or the principal can directly ask the parent for that information.
So moved.
Second. All right,
Second.
yeah, Frida?
So how did they get information before? Was there a list? Was there a guess for the records or?
Well, typically they would disclose it. I don't know what happened somewhere in our state that someone didn't want to tell that information, but at some point it was decided it needed extra clarification. So I'm not aware of an incident here or a specific incident.
Anyone else have? Yes?
So, trying to understand the trigger for the last sentence on row 8. It starts on row 8. Based on the results of the investigation, the director of school shall make a recommendation to the board to approve or deny. So, I'm trying to understand this scenario. I try to enroll into MNPS coming from Atlanta. And she's been, so the first question is, how does MNPS know that my child was in? That's my first process. How do I even know? I just moved here. How do you know? If I don't tell, but she didn't make the news.
Dr. Tincher, their records would come with them, and typically we would. Absolutely.
So they're not detailed. Excellent for additional. If I'm already getting it, under what circumstances am I asking for more?
So oftentimes a student will present several days before their records show up.
Okay.
And so they'll say, we're here, we want to enroll in this school, and we're waiting on our records from County A or State B, and they haven't shown up yet, but we want to get the child appropriately placed as soon as possible. So you say, assuming that what you're telling me is true, and then once your records show up, we'll have so having this information on the front end allows the district to make the most appropriate placement in the most timely manner possible.
Another example of that, so the file comes with the student. However, if the student is a part of a legal process or something that might, the school might be responding to something that happened in the community, or because the student is underage, there's some legal challenges for that to be in the actual school file. This will require the families to share that information so we can make the most informed decision. That information is either not released to the school based upon the age of the child and therefore wouldn't be in the file, or there could be information that is ongoing that the family's aware of that the school just would not have at their disposal. It happens very frequently.
Okay. Because I guess I'm still not feeling triggered, but that's okay. So then my next question is, at what point does it come to the board? Like, what would cause that to be a board action?
I am not aware of a mechanism by which a local board could overrule a zero tolerance violation.
That's my question. Still in another district. Why is that even in there? Like, what is this policy? What is that sentence in the policy aiming to address if it's listed in this policy, which is zero tolerance stuff, if I recall correctly? So why would it ever?
Yeah, I think we might want to turn to legal here. The only thing that this is setting up for me is if a parent requests that we overrule the decision from a previous district or school system, and if it falls, the policy says if it falls within TCA Code 49-6-3051, that's the only time we would consider it. But according to our policy, that would be a zero tolerance offense. So, I mean, I think this is a great question. What then would constitute even a need to have a process to bring something before the board? And is that something we want to look into?
We can take a look at it, but I think also, I mean, if they were achieving guilty of the zero tolerance offense or one of these offenses under 3051, and I think that would govern the recommendation.
So, okay.
I have wondered this same thing.
Adjudicated language, Juicy.
Yeah.
Adjudicated language.
I have wondered this about appeals from students when what they have done is a zero tolerance offense, and why we would even as a board consider those when our hands are completely tied as to what we can do. So that is a good point. But Frida, yeah.
So was this language written by the state?
Yes, so that was pulled directly from the statute.
Okay.
I was hoping you would ask me that.
But we don't have a role to play. I think the language invites a parent into a process that doesn't exist.
That's what I want to put, like somewhere there has to be some type of process in some Tennessee county where, or school policy that's not our school district that says, if I disagree with the district not admitting my kid, I can appeal to the board, because it doesn't make sense otherwise unless one Pacific county has that to be written in state law, because,
But
politicians are politicians.
So part of this process is once we have an approved policy, we'll create a procedure by which we determine how we deal with these, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing and my team is hearing is that we have a question mark about how this policy can be operationalized in a way that doesn't cause confusion to the parent or give them the impression that there's like this true pathway, but clarifies what we do if we receive one of these requests. That doesn't help with the language in the law, but from a operationalization process, we can create a procedure by which we account for that, and we'll need to probably do that under advisement of legal as well.
And something that doesn't cause confusion to the Board of
Yeah.
Education.
And I think
Yeah.
About to ask ChatGPT.
well, and I think, clearly, if the results of the investigation are that it was a zero tolerance, then the director of schools here is going to decide it doesn't need to come to us, or that we may as well go ahead and deny the request for the child to be admitted. It is very confusing language, though.
If it helps the board, we actually deal with this frequently enough that our team has a pretty strong procedure in place, including when a student might be moving from district to district, homeschool, because we see that a lot. There was an offense in a district, then we homeschool, then we look to re-enroll, and there's kind of a information gathering phase that we have to go through. And then what's good about this is that it does put some onus back on the family that they should be sharing the information with the school district, which did not exist prior.
Dr. Gentry.
So, and I think that the reason why this jumps out at me is because I think it falls in line with a lot of other things that the board is in the critical path of that we shouldn't be, right? Whether it's dismissals and things of that nature. And it gives the community a false sense of what the board's role is and the things that we can actually impact, right? This is why you're asked to fire teachers and, take a look at that principal and, et cetera, and things of that nature. So I would kind of couple it. If there's going to be an inquiry and roll up to the state, something more formal, to just say, why are we putting the board in policy, in practice, or otherwise in the paths of processes where we really don't have a role? And again, I think it puts us out of position with the community and the role that we're.
Yeah, and
that
we actually have a number of these. So Justin, I know we're discussing a few, we can add this one to the list. So there are a number of policies that we have questions about, how they actually work with in a school district and the intent matching the way in which school districts operate.
Thank you. Did anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, so does the law actually say that the board must approve or deny the request? Is that language in the law?
I believe the Board of Education is referenced in the statute, but I would have to go, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but yes, ma'am.
Because just we look at the numerical number where it talks about the Public Acts of 2024, it's on the sentence before that. And I was wondering, since it's not, that particular sentence is not referenced as part of the Public Acts, could we strike it?
We should go back and take a look at all.
We should go back and, given the questions that are on the table, take a look at it and see if there are any adjustments that can be made. And then based upon that, what we can do in our procedure.
And I'll just say, should whomever it was that made the motion choose to withdraw that and for us to instead decide to defer this for some further exploration, now would be your chance to do so. I don't remember who made the motion.
You know who made the motion?
Karen, who made the motion?
Was it me? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think it was Frida.
Yeah.
That's right. It was Eber then.
It was me. I'm stepping up. All right, so I make a motion to rescind the original motion to approve.
You can just rescind
Oh, no. I rescind the original motion and would like to make a new motion to table the discussion or table the vote on this policy until we have further clarification.
Second.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we would hold a governance committee meeting probably in August, one of our August meetings. And at that point, come back having sort of clarified the language around this. And of course, everyone will have received that clarification prior to that meeting. So we go in sort of knowing what decisions we want to make. And I would encourage everyone to reach out directly to Dr. Severe with any other questions you have about it, as he's working that through for us. Or legal, yes, and or legal. All right, then I'll take a vote on the motion to defer the consideration of this policy to a later meeting. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously, so this one is deferred. And that concludes business
So
for
we
the.
have one more.
Oh, sorry. Whoopsie doodle. Sorry.
So the last item, you may remember a month ago, you passed a policy 6.300 related to the code of conduct, which also creates the need to generate and post a code of conduct for visitors to our schools. I told you that once you pass the policy, that we would come back with it and we would work with Metro Legal to craft that, and we've kept our promise. And here's what it says, and it will be posted in schools. It does have some sort of interesting quirks to it in that it requires that the Board of Professional Responsibility number and the name of the attorney who develops it be posted, which I don't know that I'm familiar with any language like that, but that is a requirement. That's not something we put on there of our own accord. So you can see that it's essentially the same things we would ask of any person to behave in any sort of public space. And you have it before you, and it requires board approval.
So moved.
Second. All right. Any questions or discussion on this code of conduct? Yes. Board Member
Once this has been reviewed, does this need to be reviewed more than once for its legality and constitutionality? by the
So
Metro.
it was
Once
developed
that
with
is
that in
done,
mind.
So that it's not a repeating process. It doesn't need to be revisited the way we revisit all of our policies.
Only if the board decided that it needed to change.
You could revisit it, I don't think it's an.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, the business of the governance committee yes, go ahead.
So for future reference, if we did. Okay, for future reference, if we don't take action on a policy, what are the related actions?
So the law is still in effect, right? Except that the law says that the board will pass a policy mirroring this language.
We still have to follow it.
So we have been in this position before, and I would say, and I just want to say, this might be a good opportunity for us to consider having an executive session where the attorneys can sort of explain that to us, because I know the last time we had this type of situation, we have some new board members since then. So that's just a suggestion I'll throw out there, but,
That
Tara.
aligns with what I was going to state. So we have, as discussed, we're going to need a governance meeting in August to go over policy 6.318 with those discussions and changes that we just had, along with, any of the other policies that Dr. Battle referred to on what state law requires and how that kind of contradicts what we do as our own policies. Within my notes here, I have that we'll need to bring back policy 4.214 and talked real quick to Dr. Battle about is just to have her take another look at it, see if there's anything internally we need to do. But I also have it here that I was going to speak to legal on if there needs to be a brief in advance.
We can look it out and for.
Okay.
thank you. I think it was 4.213.
Do I have it?
Am I wrong?
I might have
The
typed it
expelled
wrong.
students,
No, it was,
mission of expelled
It
students.
is. You are right. It's 4.213. You're
Okay.
correct. Thank you.
okay, yeah. So we're looking at maybe an executive session, definitely a governance committee meeting in August. All right, then with that, this governance committee meeting is adjourned and y'all have 9 minutes.